In today's episode of the Wild Party Podcast, I'm delighted to be joined by Natalie Webb, the founder of Cafecita Coffee. After over a decade as a human rights lawyer, Natalie returned to Los Angeles with a vision to create a different kind of coffee company, one that blends her passion for social justice with a love for great coffee. In our conversation, we'll explore how Natalie navigated the challenges of building a mission-driven brand, her innovative approach to marketing and community engagement, and how she plans to expand Cafecita's presence, whether you're a coffee lover, an entrepreneur, or just someone who believes in businesses that make a difference. You won't want to miss this conversation. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and let's get this party started. Welcome to the Wild Party Podcast, where we celebrate the visionaries behind vegan, ethical, and sustainable business. In each episode, we'll dive deep into their journeys, uncovering the why behind their mission-driven business. I'm your host, Stephanie Lahart. Tune in with me for passionate discussions about overcoming challenges, innovative marketing strategies, and the power of using business as a force for good. So whether you're an entrepreneur seeking guidance or a conscious consumer wanting to support impactful brands, join us as we explore the stories behind the businesses that are changing the world for the better. Let's get the party started. Welcome to the show, Natalie. I am so excited to talk to you. And I will let you know, I am properly caffeinated with Cafecita Coffee this morning.
Oh, good.
So
Well, thank
today,
you.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, I mean, listen, I imagine when you introduce yourself and you say, I am the owner and founder of Cafecita Coffee, as soon as people hear the word coffee, their eyes light up, right?
Absolutely. It's universally loved, which is very nice. Yeah.
It is a universally loved product. And when they get to know more about your story, which is what we're going to uncover today, I think they're going to like you even better because your story is one that starts with really, being the power for the people and then deciding, I'm going to build this business as well. So, let's start at the beginning. Back in 2020, you weren't running a coffee company. You were actually doing human rights as a human rights lawyer, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Prior to launching Cafecita, I worked as a human rights lawyer for 10 years. And even before that, I was actually always working for nonprofits. Like my whole life, I've always worked for nonprofits. So, yes, very, very focused on social impact and being mission driven, which went so much into the creation of Cafecita and why we are so mission driven and focused on our impact.
Right. So when people hear the date 2020, everybody always says, uh-oh, that was the pandemic year. What happened, girl? Why did you launch coffee? But I know from talking to so many business owners like yourself that this wasn't just like a spur of the moment thing. Something had already been brewing in you. So tell me a little bit about, so 2020 happens, it's the pandemic year, and I know you've already had some thoughts going that you wanted to start your own business. Tell me, what was that like? How did you finally decide I am going to launch what I've already been thinking about?
Yeah, exactly. It was such a huge year for so many people, but it is amazing how many new businesses started that year. It was almost like the push that so many people needed to, do what they've always been thinking about. So for me, I had worked as a human rights lawyer. I lived abroad a lot. I worked from coffee shops. I loved coffee shops. I love cafe culture and the community that it creates. But I was also doing, human rights work. So I was also seeing a lot of the gender inequality that was happening and specifically in the coffee industry. So, I mean, there's so many factors that really went into creating Cafecita. But overall, I mean, to try to put it in like a nice box, it really was the fact that I was living abroad so much, had been thinking about creating my own company and just trying to figure out what exactly that would look like. Um, I will say, like, the last lawyer position that I had, I was living in Oaxaca, Mexico. And although I was working for a US organization, I was also volunteering with some nonprofits in or some organizations in Oaxaca. And one of them in particular was so inspiring to me. It's called Envia. And they, instead of being a nonprofit, they're actually a social enterprise. And so they use responsible tourism to generate money, which they then use for no interest business loans and training for women artisans around Oaxaca. And it's been incredibly successful. And all these women have been able to start their own businesses, support themselves, their families, their communities. And it's really promoted the traditional arts. So, all that to say is that had a huge impact on me and really changed my focus from thinking I was going to start my own nonprofit to being a social enterprise. And then because I loved coffee so much and I had all this experience working from cafes, I decided I wanted the business side to be, a coffee company. And then a percentage of every sale would go to supporting women's nonprofits. But then also because I saw the gender inequality that was happening in the coffee industry, I took it a step further and Cafecita, all our coffees are sourced from sustainable women-owned coffee farms and co-ops. So the business side is not just business; it's actually in itself, supporting women-owned farms and really like putting them in the driver's seat and doing a sense of empowerment as well. So trying to go the business model, like every which way, being able to be focused on sustainability and empowerment.
Yeah, and it's really important that you did utilize all of your experience because I think I read that you had traveled to over 70 countries, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah,
you really, I mean, you really saw a lot of the world and know firsthand the struggles that are going on out there. I know, us being in the US, we're insulated in a lot of ways that a lot of people, every day is a struggle for them. Sometimes we sit here and say, "Oh, I just don't feel like getting out of bed." And that's not a luxury other people in other parts of the world have. It's a struggle from, morning till night. So I can imagine, what you've seen out there in the world. You were like, I do want to do this and I want to do it in the right way, which is honestly, what really attracted me to, your business and wanted you to be on the podcast because I was like, this is a message that I'm so passionate about that we can build very sustainable and profitable businesses and not at the expense of other people in the world or in the world itself.
exactly.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, okay, I teased you a little bit before we got on the recording. I said, hey, we actually met prior. So, to take our audience back a little bit, a couple of weeks ago, I attended this really great event with the Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator. It was a women's brunch, and Cafecita Coffee was one of the sponsors. So, we all lined up for our coffee and we, wait in line and get up there. And I was very excited about the menu because, first of all, I knew I could get a vegan option. And also, it was very exciting because I think I ended up getting the ginger turmeric latte, which like totally rocked my world. And I do have to admit, I was so just, overwhelmed with the kind of event and meeting new people. I didn't really focus on you too much or what the actual name of the coffee company was. And I kind of just got my free coffee and then did my thing. And then I got home and I started thinking about it. And I looked you up online. I said, oh my God, we actually met because I've been to your coffee cart over at Tansy
Oh,
in
no
Burbank.
way.
And I had been
Yeah.
there many times and we had talked. And I'm like, I feel horrible. I was so interested in my free coffee. I didn't even realize I had met you before. I had talked to you. We had had interactions. Okay, so you guys, Natalie also has a coffee cart, which we're going to get into, that's out in Burbank, and it's around my favorite little shopping distance at district. And there's this plant store called Tansy, which is like every girl that walks in there, they're like, I want to live here. It's
Yes.
it's the most beautiful, magical place. And you very smartly positioned your coffee cart there, which I mean, first of all, kudos for the great marketing idea there. But we had talked and we had talked about your coffee, and also I'd also partaken in your delicious vegan, what is it, cinnamon bun
Yes.
that
So
is like
good.
famous. And I will tell you
Yes.
this, one day when I was there, I bought your very last one. And there was a
Oh,
family behind me with two children. And when they got up there, they'd realized you
oh,
had sold out. And I thought about turning around and offering to them. And I didn't because I thought to
oh.
myself, you know what? They're going to come back. I know she's going to have them again. And I didn't know when I was going to be back. And they bought other stuff for their children. But I'm that person. I didn't give it to the kids. Okay.
It's
So with
okay.
all that
It's okay.
said, I just want to let you know I already knew you. I was already obsessed with your coffee. And here's why. It is delicious. Besides the social good, absolutely delicious. But we all know with all of that backstory that it's not like you just wake up and say, I'm starting a coffee company. You decide, I do want to start this coffee company. I want to make it sustainable. I want to make sure it has a mission behind it. How did you go out and find the, growers that you were going to work with? Like, how did you start your business is where we really want to go.
Sure. Well, thank you, by the way, for all that kind feedback. I appreciate it about the coffee. And amazing that we've met. And thank you for coming to support the trailer. And Tansy is incredible. Like it really is such a amazing store. There's nothing like it, I think, in LA. As far as the journey and how I got to where I am now, it really has been, it really it's been a long time in the making. It really doesn't happen overnight at all. And so it started really as working as a human rights lawyer and just knowing that I loved the work. I loved my clients. There was so much positive about it. But I just always knew that I wanted to have my own business. And so it really just took a long time to kind of figure out what shape that would take. And because I had worked at nonprofits and seen kind of the pros and cons of the nonprofit business model, I was hesitant to do that. I mean, it really was seeing the reliance on grant writers and grant reporters, and that you're really at the mercy of whatever grants that you get. And every year you're kind of in this like frenzy of funding. That's why I was so inspired by seeing Envia and being in Oaxaca and seeing social enterprises and seeing that the business side could sustain the nonprofit side and you're completely self-sufficient and you don't have to worry about outside funding. So I decided that that was exactly what I wanted to do. Because I love coffee. I already knew I wanted to make it a coffee company. Um, in the end of 2019, my dad passed away. And so that was actually the reason I moved from Oaxaca back to Los Angeles. And then I was here when the pandemic started. So it kind of all came together where it felt like a moment where like this was the time for me to really take that leap and start this company that I had been thinking about. And I started it in June 2020. So it was still like right in the beginning of the pandemic. Nobody knew what was happening the next day. We kept, like everything was just in constant flux. But I really wanted to use that to my advantage. And so whereas a lot of companies, had a huge overhead, they had staff, they had all of these expenses that they couldn't get out of. They had rent. I really tried to pivot to where the market was going. I mean, the good thing with coffee, even though it is completely competitive and there's so many options out there, people like the demand is there. Even during a pandemic, people want their coffee every morning. And so seeing that actually e-commerce and, home subscription services all of a sudden skyrocketed. So focused on that. And then I was just very lucky that I connected with, it's called Regarding Her. And it's actually a nonprofit based in LA that works with women in the restaurant industry and the food service industry. They had actually just started as well. And they did a food festival that was focused on like women owned restaurants in LA. And because I had connected with them, a lot of their cafes that were part of it would sell Cafecita during the festival. And then because I had mentioned we donate a percentage of every sale to women's nonprofits. For that festival, we donated it back to Regarding Her. And so many of the cafe owners like selling Cafecita that they continue to sell the coffee even after the festival. So then that got me into the wholesale world. Through that, I then connected with people who had like B2B companies. And so then started doing a lot of B2B and corporate gifting, which was also huge at the time because you couldn't market face to face anymore. So a lot of companies were sending gifts to their customers, clients, potential vendors. So that was great for Cafecita as well. And so really kind of leaned into where the market was those first couple of years. And then once I felt like it was safe enough really to open like a retail location, I decided I wanted to do a coffee trailer and be able to, move around and kind of have that flexibility. So got bank loans for that, opened up the trailer, and now actually we're almost at 1 year. November will be 1 year since we launched the trailer. For the first 6 months, we were doing pop-ups all over LA, which was amazing, but a lot of work. But also really great to kind of meet the community and really kind of be out there, get the brand recognition. And then we had the amazing opportunity to move into Tansy. And so in May of this year, we moved into Tansy, which is now we're open Wednesday through Sunday there. And it's a completely new experience, like a new chapter for Cafecita where we're um, able to really build the community there and have regulars and be able to have those conversations and know about people's families and what they're up to. And really like that was the goal of Cafecita all along, was to have a space like that. So I'm really excited about that. But then I thought once we moved in there, we wouldn't be getting event requests. But as we've met, you saw like we keep getting event requests. And so now that's become like a third wing where we have the roastery, we have the coffee trailer, and we're still doing events. And we do a lot of corporate events. So we're actually about to do a 9-day one for UGG in November in Melrose. And like it's great. I love the fact that we're able to kind of have these three different branches of the company, which all were just from kind of leaning into what opportunities were out there.
Yeah, and I'm thrilled actually about the UGG event because UGG just finally started coming out with a vegan version of their footwear because
Awesome.
I am a lifestyle vegan. So previously I would have been like, ugh, but now I'd be like,
Yeah.
oh girl, I'll be there for that. Um,
Good, good.
but what you said was so important that you realized early on that the value of building partnerships was really how you were going to launch because I know that you work exclusively with women-owned coffee farms, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Right. So how were you able to source these partnerships? Was it for, through your travels that you had already met these people? Because, a lot, we have ideas like, oh, I want to launch this business. But physically, then how did you put it together that you knew where the coffee farms are that you wanted to? And then the whole process of making coffee is an actual chemistry? So how did you then become educated in, how does coffee work? Like, how does it get roasted? How does it get packaged? Where did all of that come from?
So it was a combination. I mean, it's been a huge learning journey, right? And it continues to be, which I love. Like that's what I want, is to always be learning and having those challenges. But it's also been a lot of lessons on like delegation. And so I realized early on that I didn't have to be the one that was roasting the coffee and packaging the coffee and being the barista. Like you need to find kind of experts to like bring in on your team. And work with everyone. And so that's exactly what I did. So I really initially I reached out to roasters in LA. I reached out to coffee shops that had a social focus. So which was great. And I was amazed that people were open to talking to me about it and really got so much great advice that way. So all that to say is I kind of knew how I was going to do the actual like the physical work and found amazing partners for that. But then it was also finding these farms, right? Like I wanted to source exclusively from sustainable women-owned coffee farms that shared our values. And so I reached out to actually a coffee importer called Sustainable Harvest. And I really love their business model. They're focused on relationship coffee as well. And so they've been around since the 90s and they have amazing relationships with these farms, including this women owned coffee farm in Honduras. It's a co op. They do incredible work. It supports 500 women and their families. And so that was initially like the first partnership that we had, was because the importer that I connected with already had that relationship. And now that's like on our set menu and we talk with them and it's great. And then it's also amazing with social media these days that farms around the world will reach out to me through Instagram and say that they want to send samples. And I'm always open to that. So another farm that we work with is in Rwanda. And it was actually a family member from the farm who's moved to the US who works as a doctor. Like they're doing amazing, but they still want to help the family farm. So they import the coffee and they had sent a sample and it was incredible. And so, and they're 100% focused on women's empowerment as well. So we added that also to the menu, and now that's also one of our offerings. And so all I have to say is there are so many incredible women-owned farms out there. I think people just don't realize how to connect with them, but they're there, and it's so important, I think, to support them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do love that so much about your business because, it's not just in other parts of the world, but in the US too. Women often fall to be the breadwinners and, the main source of income for so many families. And in no way, denigrating men in any way, but, we have the children, we physically
Yeah.
birth them. And for the most part, it's left to women as to be the ones that we're keeping the family together, or maybe, just helping the family. Like you mentioned, those doctors that were trying to help their family too. So, it's great when we hear about businesses like coffee that it can be something that women can utilize to support their family, whether it be their immediate or extended families and things like that, and still be able to have time to raise the family as well. Because as you know, a business, it takes a lot of work and a lot of time. It's not just like you click one button. Sometimes I feel like the internet and social media makes it look like that. Oh, I just launched an Instagram and overnight I had a very successful business. And we all know 10 years later, I had a very successful business.
Exactly.
And we can see your journey now, 4 years where you've gone, and it's, been so great. And I do want to tell everyone who's listening out there, please go check out Cafecita Coffee's Instagram because, first of all, beautifully put together. Secondly, just will make your mouth water that you have to go
Oh,
to their website and immediately order their coffee to try it. Because, like I said, I was so excited being at the event and getting my little coffee sample, which I immediately went home and made. So, but with that said, so I know that you are, running, as you said, coffee is so competitive. And you're really competing against some much larger companies, bigger budgets, bigger, marketing, just bigger awareness of their brand. So, how are you maintaining your competitive edge in the specialty coffee market specifically?
yeah, coffee is so competitive. There's so many people that are in it, like across the spectrum from like the massive Starbucks, right, which takes up 35% of the market to like a lot of small, micro roasteries as well. But one of the things that I find so fascinating about it is the gender inequality doesn't just end at the farms. It's the whole chain up. And so even roasters in the US, like women roasters earn 84 cents to the dollar that male roasters make. And then 75% of roasters are men. I mean, there's so many of these, so much data out there as well about in the US. And so I think having a women owned roastery, first of all, it's unique. Like there's hardly any in LA, which is uh, mind boggling to me, considering like how many people are drinking coffee every day. There's very, very rare coffee companies that have any type of social impact. I mean, when you look at most coffee companies, they're so focused on the cup of coffee. Like, look how beautiful this latte art is. And and that's fine, but that's what everyone is kind of doing. It's very rare to find a coffee company that is so focused on impact and being mission driven. And I think that that really gives us a unique part of the market because there are so many consumers that want to support brands that align with their values. And so it's great meeting people and customers who get so excited about Cafecita because they are making an impact just by buying coffee, which they're going to buy anyways, just by drinking their coffee in the morning, that they're actually part of something bigger. And so it's been great for Cafecita because we really are really can separate ourselves from the vast majority of the coffee industry because of that.
Yeah, and they're what we call our conscious consumers. I consider myself one of them too. And this is an election year, so I'll say it. You vote with your wallet. You do. You
Yes.
get to support the companies that you want. You mentioned a company that I actually never go to, Star Yucks, I call them.
Yeah.
I think their
Good one.
coffee is horrible. I
Yep.
did, but they, you know what? They had well, they've been around a long time, but they have enough of that market awareness that people go to them like a fast food place because they know the level they're going to get. Whether that level is good or not, they don't care. They just know what it is. So it's nice that we have the opportunity now with businesses like yours that we could say, hey, we can actually, look for a better value, like a better value and just a better experience. And you don't have to run to just what's fast anymore. Although you're pretty fast because you do have that subscription service, which I love. But I want to touch more back on the sustainability sector because I know, first of all, that your coffee truck, your trailer is actually solar powered.
Yep.
So that's pretty cool. So you obviously have sustainability built in. So tell me a little bit maybe about some of the challenges that you faced in maintaining sustainability as you're scaling your business. Because we know what happens with a lot of businesses that they realize if they want to get larger, if they want to make more money, it's where they start cutting the corners and they start accepting, I'm just going to say a substandard way of doing things in order to go faster, bigger, and more profitable. Because sustainability in a lot of ways can cost a business. So how are you maintaining that level of what you want to do as you scale your business?
Yeah, well, it's so integral to Cafecita. So it's something where it's not ever a question of cutting corners. Because yeah, I completely agree. That's what most business is. And when you're like a more traditional company, right, it's all about money, capitalism, making as much as possible. But I think going into Cafecita or starting it, it was there was the goal was never to make as much money as possible. It really was to be a socially conscious coffee company. And so even if it costs more money, like it's something that I just put into the budget. And so solar has been incredibly challenging. Like we've always been sustainable in that our packaging is 100% compostable, like the shipping containers are, 100% recyclable, everything like that. We were one of the only green business certified companies in LA, the only coffee company that's green business certified. But the solar was like, how much more can we push this? Like what more can we be doing to leave like the smallest footprint possible? And so I was really drawn to trying to make the trailer solar powered, and we are now solar powered. We have the panels out, and it's great, but it is also, it feels like being on the forefront of a lot of this technology. So we started by getting batteries from a company called Jewel Case, which is a great company. They're based in Idaho, and they make these electric batteries specifically for like mobile food businesses. And so, because they're a startup, I mean, I've even working with them for the past year, I see the changes that they're making to their product and to their marketing, and they're, raising funds and all of these things. And so it feels like being right along with them as they're growing. And then I believe we're the first company that they've worked with that hasn't just kept it electric, right? Which is still better than, right, the generators and how, yeah, there's generators are like the worst on so many levels. But actually being able to turn them solar. And so I worked with an amazing solar tech. He like builds out microgrids, and he normally does much larger microgrids. But because he's a friend, he was open to working on Cafecita. So now we have our own little baby size microgrid, and we're completely solar.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, first of all, being in Southern California, we have a lot of sun. Right?
Yes.
So, and
Yeah.
I love to see when, the more solar panels that are popping up everywhere, because it's like, hey, we have this resource here that we really should be utilizing so much more. So when I didn't realize it at first until I started doing my research, I was like, oh, that's all totally solar powered. That's even better. And then as I thought about it, I was like, yeah, that's right. When I walk up to that coffee cart, it's an entirely pleasant experience all around because I'm not hearing a generator. I'm not
Mm-mm.
smelling stuff. And it was just, obviously you're in a plant store too. So I think that, really turned my mind. But I was like, yeah, that's right. Now I understand it. So I was really excited when I saw that part of it. So in regards to all of this, talk we've done about sustainability and everything, how are you ensuring like particularly specifically with your coffee producers that the women farmers that you're working with are benefiting from your sustainable practices and from working with them, like how, because I know you're a human rights lawyer, so I'm sure you have some systems in place, but a lot of times we do hear people saying, oh, they're just greenwashing. Obviously you aren't, but how are you making sure that women are really benefiting from your service?
Yeah, I've first of all, that's like such a pet peeve of mine because I see other companies doing it, but I also feel like it's so easy to see through it. So I hope that like consumers can really see who's being authentic and who's just doing it for the marketing. For Cafecita, we actually connect with the farm. So I went down, we used to source from Chiapas. So I actually went down and met with our producers there and like stayed with them. And it was incredible experience really to see the coffee being grown that I only normally see it when it's in like the big sacks, like when it's been delivered. So speaking with them, visiting them, the producers in Honduras, the same thing, connecting with them. And then the person that lives in the US who's connected to the family farm in Rwanda, also just connecting with them and hearing from them. And I actually do an impact report every year on what Cafecita does. And when I'm creating that impact report, I connect with the farms and see like, what have you done? Right. Like I know when we started, like these are the projects that you've been wanting to work on, but like, what have you done this year? And it's great for me to know. And it's also great for Cafecita's customers to know. So for example, the farm in Rwanda, they are actually building daycare centers at the washing stations for the women so that they don't have to, like you talked about before, like that balance of like being a mom, but also like running a business. And so they have people that are able to take care of their kids while they're doing their work, which is so important. And then they provide healthcare for all of their members, which is incredible. Like because all of the struggles that we're talking about being a small business trying to be sustainable here is on them as well. It's not easy to run a small farm. And so making sure that even if your profits aren't as high, but you're like using, or not that your profits aren't so high, but that you're using some of your profits for social good is just incredible. And so I really like that. And then the other thing that they do is that they actually provide other types of livestock and goats to the members of their farm as well. And that's for diversified income and food sustainability. So all of these, hearing about all these things, and they have photos of all of it, is just it's great. It's great for me. I just really enjoy seeing that they are, putting their, uh, like doing what they said that they're going to do. And I'm really hoping to get out to the farm in Rwanda. I've been to Rwanda, but I haven't actually visited the farm. And so that is definitely on the list of things that I would love to do and actually be there firsthand.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important, just like you said, people you have to walk the walk. People do a lot of this talking out there. And you mentioned, about the consumers, being aware of it. And I think in a lot of way, the businesses, us as business owners, we have to lead the way because people don't know. I have learned so much from having this podcast about things like just, what it means to have the leaping bunny symbol on your products. I'm like, "Oh, I didn't realize there was such a long certification for that." And, as consumers, they don't know and they don't even know the answer to the question. So I really loved about Cafecita Coffee, even when I went to your website, you had so much of this information readily available. So you really told people the story about where your coffee comes from, what your practices are, and what your vision is. So with that said, mentioning your website, I want to talk to you a little bit about your marketing strategies because you did mention in the beginning that you started with, doing some events and then some partnerships and then launched your e-commerce brand and then finally your cart. So what really now has been like your most effective in reaching your customers? Like where are you finding that people are really finding you now?
It's incredible actually, because we have, a marketing budget of zero, right? Like we do not do any marketing really, or we do what we can that doesn't cost money. And I've been amazed at the amount of people who find Cafecita through our SEOs. I mean, I just assume that is what it is because they find us through the website. And I think it's, really putting out there like this is what we're about. So, we're women owned, we're solar powered, we're sustainable. And that people that are looking for that, like we're first, we're right there. Although like I have never spent any money on that. So it's really I would say to anybody having a good website, that's how so many people get to know brands these days. And I think just being able to pull them in that way. And then of course after that, like you want to have a way that people can reach you, make sure that you're like available to respond. So that's the biggest one for the events, I would say. Um, every time I have an event organizer reach out, I'm always like, how did you how did you find out about us? Or even we actually are the one of the official coffee roasters for Patagonia, which was like huge as well. And I asked the woman who had reached out from Patagonia, like, how did you like how did you find out about it? We're such like a little company. And they were like, yeah, just online. I was searching. So all I have to say is I think having a really good website is important. And then for the trailer, that one I mean it is really hard because where it is in Burbank, there's like coffee shops every other block. And so getting the word out so like the community know that there's a new coffee shop around and all of that I would say has been more challenging. So I've walked up and down Magnolia to like all the businesses to let them know and like to give them like a neighbor discount. I got very lucky that there's a market like 2 blocks away called Handy Market, and they had actually separately tried Cafecita and loved it. So now they sell Cafecita, and it's 2 blocks from the trailer, which is great. So then people can try the coffee and be like, oh, I want to actually try their turmeric latte and like go, just walk down the street a little bit and try it. So that's been really good as well. But yeah, it is very challenging in the cafe to have um, to have marketing that has really reached people. I feel like it's more word of mouth, which is nice, but not, like it's you have to be very patient with that. Whereas like coffee companies who have massive marketing budgets and really can have commercials and having people out there and sponsor events and do all of that. So you have to be a lot more creative when you're a small business.
Well, you hit the nail right on the head with what you just said. You have to be creative when you're a small business. But as a marketer, I want to point out a few things for our audience here. So when you said you have no marketing budget and you do no marketing, that is not true. Here is why. So one of the best ways of getting out to the market is simply by being involved in the community, which you did naturally from the get-go by being involved in events, responding to partnership requests and things like that. That is all marketing, whether people kind of realize that or not. So I wanted to just say, as far as like, the events is really where I find small businesses have the most leverage. So whatever's going on in, a neighborhood or just kind of a community, whether it's a farmer's market or a pop-up, or even being, like you said, invited to specific events like Lacey's event and things like that. That's great marketing for any business. So I really like to hear that it's worked so well for you because I want to make sure that our small business owners that are out here listening to this podcast, understand that that's where you start because a lot of times they have a mentality like you just had, like, well, we don't have a marketing budget, so we can't do anything because people automatically think marketing means buying ads, and that's not where your best marketing comes from because you have to have proof in the pudding first. Like you have to prove that the product is, marketable and people want it, right? So you did that beautifully from the get-go. And like I said, I was first introduced to you from that coffee cart out there. So Tansy, again, you guys, whoever's listening to this and you're in the Southern California area. So Tansy is out in Burbank, and then the Cafecita Coffee truck is right in the front in the garden section. I highly recommend you make a special trip out there because it is such a beautiful, wonderful, and delicious experience. In fact, I will tell you, when I go out to your coffee cart, it wasn't the ginger turmeric latte that I had. It was the Mexican coffee, the one that has the chocolate in it.
Oh yes, the spicy mocha.
The spicy mocha. Oh my
So
God,
good.
that is my most favorite. So again, whoever's listening to this, you must go out and try it. I have to ask you personally, what is your favorite way to take your coffee?
That's a great question. It's when I'm home, I actually just do the AeroPress. So I don't know if you've tried an AeroPress, but it's very low maintenance and it's delicious every time, so smooth. So I'm a big fan of AeroPress. At the trailer though, it's hard. I love all of our drinks. We actually home make all of our syrups using natural ingredients. And as you know, being vegan, like everything is we actually use oat milk as the basis for a lot of the drinks that we make. We offer people like other alternatives, but the oat milk is really like what we recommend the most. Um, the spicy mocha, I would say, had initially been my favorite. I loved it so much. I still do, but now we've added so many drinks to the menu, so it's so hard. We have a homemade chai, which most cafes don't home make their chai because it is so much work, like fresh ginger, like cardamom, all of it. But it's so good. So I would say the dirty chai latte is now my favorite. But yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong. The turmeric also was my favorite for a while. They're also good. Like I won't, I would never put something on the menu unless I loved it, and would drink it myself every day.
Yeah, so I was going to say clearly now when I go out to the coffee cart, I was going to have to do my spicy mocha and my ginger turmeric latte. But now you just mentioned the dirty chai, and let me tell you, chai has always been a pain point for me because I love it, and I find when I try to go to order it at restaurants, it always has a dairy base. So I'm like, well, it's
Yeah.
not vegan, and you just saying that yours is a vegan base. Well, now I have
Yes.
three drinks that I'm walking away from. I'm going to have to get another hand.
Yeah. Yeah, no, our chai is it's completely vegan and we really make it spice forward so it's not too sweet. None of the drinks are too sweet because that's it's one of those things that I hate when you go to a cafe and they just have the pumps with the artificial sugaring and it's just being sustainable for me is not just like the company ethos, but also our customers, right? We want to serve healthy, good drinks that are sustainable for our customers.
Yeah, so okay, so just thinking a little bit in the future, I don't want to do what 5 years from now, what are you going to look like? But what are you focusing on for the future for like the next 6 to 12 months? Where do you see Cafecita Coffee growing or going or building?
So it's a good question. Having having a very kind of palm tree mentality is how I like to think about it, about like which way the wind is blowing. Like that has been the last 4 years of here's an opportunity, lean into it. Here's an opportunity, lean into it. It's also part of that though is having plans like that, being like, okay, taking in the data that I'm seeing on the three branches of, our business with the roastery, the cafe, cafe trailer, pseudo cafe trailer, and the events, kind of looking at what makes the most sense. And it's really the events, like the events have been great. And so still maintaining like those three arms, but I am planning to look more into the events and really kind of going into that space because especially with our economy not being great, and although no one wants to call it a recession, like I can tell you in Burbank where everybody's in the film industry, like you really there's a, people are it's tough. It's a tough time for a lot of people.
Yeah, and just mentioning what you just said about the recession, coffee, I think, is recession proof, isn't it? Isn't it the one little luxury people still allow themselves, right?
It
Because
is. It is 100%, especially if you have the option of like you can get the beans or you can actually buy like the latte. So having both of those available to customers and like wherever the budget is, wherever however they're drinking their coffee, I think is a really it's nice to have those options for people.
yeah, and also the other thing I wanted to bring up is your growing market, in case you aren't aware of it, are all the people like myself that have decided to live a sober lifestyle because sobriety is so huge now, with
Yep.
all the non-alcoholic brands that are out there and people realizing like you can still partake in social situations with a special feeling cocktail that doesn't have alcohol. I got way more into coffee and tea and just doing the whole process of it. Like you said, the AeroPress, like I got much more interested in doing like the rituals of things. I know for me, when I first got sober, people are like, well, what did you do? I'm like, why, I just simply replaced one ritual with another. I got very into tea making and like tea and doing special things. And then I found myself with coffee too. It became a whole special thing for me. So I'm just mentioning that because that might be some events you want to get involved with. I have a couple sober groups that would love you because we're all super into our coffee now. That's now our drug of choice. Perhaps that could be a whole new market for you, is
Yeah.
like partnering up with
Oh,
these groups.
Oh, absolutely. And like, yeah, even though I'm in events over across the board because it's really being able to connect with people in different groups is incredible. So even like there was a woman who came up who has a doula group and she wants actually coffee there. It's like, yes, like we would love to any of these type of events. It's such a nice way to connect with people.
It is. And then there's nothing like a good, cup of coffee in the morning to just be like, oh, this is why I woke up. I know I feel it. Uh,
Yep.
so So as we kind of wind this down, you've done such an amazing journey with Cafecita, and I can't wait to see where you're going. But if you could give one little bit of advice for someone who's out there listening, they had thought about, hey, I might want to start my own business. What would you say to a budding entrepreneur out there? Just the one thing to keep in mind as they start their business.
Oh goodness, there's so much. There's so much, and I feel like I've learned the hard way the whole way. But I really, I'm a solo founder, and that's great in a lot of ways. But I wish that I had a co-founder. I think having the more people helping you, the better. I do have an incredible board of advisors who are all these amazing women who come from like different fields and have all this different experience. And they've been, my number one cheerleaders since day one. So I really appreciate having them. Just having people in your corner, I think is really what it is. The other recommendation I would make is there are a lot of resources out there for small business owners, especially like women-owned small businesses. So for Lacey, that where the event where we had met, Cafecita is part of the Lacey portfolio. And so I had done the Founders Business Accelerator through them, completely free program. And we were connected, with business advisors and also just other small businesses, which is huge. Being able to connect with other small businesses just to be able to vent, to be able to be like, these are my challenges and be like, oh, you're going through the same thing. Like there's so much community in that kind of reminds you like you're not alone. And so that's a big one as well. The financing aspect, I bootstrapped Cafecita initially, and that is really tough. I would say if you cannot bootstrap, don't bootstrap. Like, when I decided to start the trailer, that's when I was getting bank loans, and I was like, I wish I had just done, I think, the bank loans to begin with, because then you can really hit the ground running. So, if I could go back, that is something I would do. I would recommend, though, as far as if people are looking for financing, and especially again, women, it's so hard to get financing. I worked with Pacific Community Ventures. They're like a community-based organization, like lender. So I don't think they even want to call themselves a bank, but they really focus on, I think they call it like restorative financial, like that's just their business model. And so they are more willing to work with small businesses in a very holistic sense to kind of get us off the ground more than like traditional banks. So all that to say is I think having a strong community behind you to support you, finding free resources out there that can really help your business grow and like connect you to the right people. And then as far as the financing, if you can find organizations and nonprofits that are focused on helping small businesses, I wish I had gone that route to begin with.
Wow, you summed that up so perfectly. And that was such valuable advice for our people that are listening out there. Like I said, our small business owners and also our conscious consumers, helping them make better choices with their wallets. Remember, we all have the power to choose how we're spending our time, how we're spending our dollars. So make good choices. Don't just be led by the latest trend or the easiest option. Let's say that. Fast is not always better. So with that said, Natalie, it has been a joy talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing all of your wisdom and your delicious coffee. Like I said, I was a fan before I even knew. That day when I met you at Lacey, I'm like, oh, I already know you. I've already experienced your coffee. It's already delicious. So thank you. So with that said, thank you so much. And I cannot wait to see what the future holds for you. And of course, go get my spicy mocha latte, my ginger turmeric latte, and my dirty chai next time I'm out in Burbank.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
To learn more about Cafecita Coffee, including ordering online, visit their website at cafecitacoffee.com. That's CAFECITACOFFEE.com. Thanks for listening to the Wild Party Podcast. If you're an entrepreneur or professional who would like to be on this podcast, please visit boomtownmarketing.com and click on podcast. We believe that every business has the potential to change the world for good, and we want to support our community to help make the world more ethical, compassionate, and sustainable for all future generations to come. And if you're looking to build your business, no matter what level you're at now, request your free marketing consultation at boomtownmarketing.com and click Get Started.